In this presentation, we're going to look at portfolios. We're going to consider 12 areas. What does it mean, portfolio? Who uses portfolios? Look at some examples. Think about the purpose of portfolios. Think about portfolio contents. Consider school standards and national standards. Look at more detail on the portfolio and how it works. Consider portfolio formats. Think about the idea of portfolio competitions, and then consider 5 summary questions. So the portfolio, if we take a dictionary definition, this is from Merriam-Webster Dictionary. Definition number 1, a hinged cover or flexible case for documents of different kinds. Definition number 4, set of pictures bound in a book or loose in a folder. And number 5, a selection of students' work, such as papers and tests, compiled over a period of time and used for assessing performance or progress. These 3 definitions are linked and are useful for us to consider when thinking about portfolios. So who uses portfolios? Well, models, of course, use portfolios. Photographers also have portfolios. Artists have portfolios of their work. Architects have portfolios of their projects, their buildings. Project managers, nurses can build up portfolios. Teachers can produce portfolios. And of course, learners. A lot of people use portfolios. So the concept of portfolios and the idea of portfolios and building a portfolio is a useful thing for our learners to do in general terms, as well as part of their learning. So what does a portfolio look like? Let's have a look at some examples. This is an architectural portfolio, and it's pretty fancy. We've got a very nice photograph, and we've got a text about the building. This is very designed, lots of use of white space. So this is a very professionally done portfolio. This is a photographer's portfolio. We have 3 pictures and we have a short bit of text describing the pictures. Again, lots of white space. It's very designed, it's very clean, and it focuses attention on the work, on the artifacts which are being shown. As mentioned in the definitions, a portfolio might be a bound book of some kind or a folder of some kind. And this is an example of such. This is an example of a portfolio of tear sheets. So articles have been torn from the magazines and just put into a folder. Now, this is not as designed as the previous ones, but it is organized. The design is inherent in the contents, and the organization principle is chronological. So it's not as designed as the others, but it is organized. In this one, this is a collection of certificates for training of various kinds. And again, the design is inherent in the design of the certificates, in the design of the artifacts which the portfolio is holding, and the organization of the portfolio is chronological. Here you can have lots of different things. You can have diagrams, photographs, lots of different things can go into a portfolio. And of course, a website, a personal website, is a portfolio at heart, showing the work of the person that the website's about. So portfolios can be online as well as and hard copy. And then, of course, there's the European language portfolio. Now, this is quite a complex portfolio because it has 3 parts. It has the language passport part, which is a statement of the learner's current ability in the languages which they claim to speak. So that's saying, I can do X, Y, and Z in the language. The biography is about their language learning history. So where did they study? What levels did they did? How many hours have they done? What courses have they taken? What exams have they taken? And then the dossier is the evidence to back up all of this. And the dossier is really the portfolio part. It's where the artifacts are. So the certificates, examples of essays, examples of projects which they've done, examples of leaflets which they've produced. So the language biography, that would occur, really, it's like a CV. It's their language learning CV. And that would be really evident in a CV anyway. So it's a bit extraneous, the language biography, in my opinion. But the language passport part, where it's based on self-assessment of the learner's ability, is a useful thing. So we need to bear that in mind. And the dossier, the collection, the real portfolio part, of course, is very useful. So what's the purpose of a portfolio? Well, it's a showcase. It's to showcase what we can do in the language. And it's to showcase the particular works or the particular artifacts which we're using to demonstrate our abilities. So it needs to look good. It needs to be selective. We can't include everything. It needs to show the best of what we can do as evidence to show what we can actually do in the language. It needs to be designed in some kind of way so it looks good. And it needs to be organized by some kind of principle so that it appears to be coherent, not just a random collection of artifacts. There needs to be some kind of organizational basis behind it. And that helps to show that there's been thought put into the portfolio. So what should go into a language portfolio? Well, I think self-assessment is a very good idea. So we should have some element of self-assessment. Of course, we need artifacts to show what the learners can do. But we also need a learning or reflective commentary, which is also part of learning. And then we need a declaration. So let's have a look at these in more detail. So a self-assessment, we could use a grid like this. This is from the Common European Framework. And these are the listening, reading, speaking, interaction and production, and writing at a general level. You might want to use it at this level, or you might want to have more detailed descriptors, say at a B1 and a B2 and a C1 level. So you might just want to focus down on the particular two bands, for example. But the learner completes this at the beginning of the course, and then hopefully by the end of the course, they can add another box to their learning profile. What about the actual content in terms of artifacts? Well, we could have an advert, for example, or a blurb, the reading journal, essay, poster, presentation, or evidence of a presentation, an infographic, video, a blog, a website or a web page, a podcast, a project, a letter, a brochure, a leaflet. Lots of different things could go in the portfolio. But what's not here are things like gap fills of texts and things like that, which are like the traditional coursebook exercises. I don't really think these are very useful for portfolios because they don't really give us a lot of information. And you could easily complete the gap fill by copying from your partner. It's harder to fake an essay. And the essay and the poster and these kind of things give us much, much, much more evidence of the language ability of the students. So they're just plainly more useful, more informative. So these are the kinds of artifacts which we need to be thinking about. And these are all productive artifacts. They're written and spoken production from the learners. And this is where we need to be focusing our attention. The learning reflective commentary is useful for the learners to consider where they are and where they want to go. So they need to think about questions like this: what I learned from doing this task. How am I improving? And how is this shown in the task? And then how can I do better next time? Because our learners are on a learning journey towards better performance in these areas. So we want them to be better speakers and better writers. And they're on a journey towards this better level of performance in the future. And the learning reflective commentary is helping them assess where they are and where they need to go on this learning journey. And this is a very useful thing to include in the portfolio, not just sort of, good essay, put it in the portfolio, but to think about why is it a good essay and how it can be improved. And of course, there needs to be a declaration to say that it's their own work and not their big brother or little sister's work. So this is all part of a positive ethos about work and about issues such as plagiarism and things like that. They need to sign a declaration that the work is theirs. Now, school standards. I think each school should have one model of portfolio which is used across the school, across the subjects, or at a minimum, English has one style of portfolio and physics has another style of portfolio, but all English teachers use the same style of portfolio. It's not fair on the students if one teacher's conceptualization of the portfolio is different. One conception involves more or less work. It needs to be standardized across the school to be fair, to avoid resentment and things like and possible problems like that. So you need to agree with your colleagues across the school or across the subject within the school, what is the model of portfolio which you're going to use? And of course, there might be national standards for portfolios, and you might want to consider following the national standards as your school standard, or departing from the national standards and using the school standards, but bearing in mind that if you have to submit the portfolio, it needs to meet the national standards, which are for portfolio submission. So the portfolio, how does it work? Well, I think there are three elements to the portfolio. The first is the collection of the works. And so the learner adds materials to the collection of all their works. But then they take the best works and put this in their portfolio. Then they'll add more works to the collection and add to the portfolio, and remove from the portfolio if they replace works which are no longer the best works by work which is newer work, which is better. But then, and they keep doing this. So it's a circular process of adding works to the collection, selecting works for the portfolio, reevaluating the works in the portfolio, and maintaining the portfolio at the level of bestness. But then the final stage is where you show the portfolio work to another, and I'm calling this the exhibition. So this is the best of the best, and might not have all the works which are in the portfolio itself, but it might just be a selection of the best works of the portfolio. And this is the submitted portfolio. Another way to look at it is thinking about it in terms of three portfolios, which are derived, portfolio 2 is derived from portfolio 1 and portfolio 3 is derived from portfolio 2. But I like thinking about it in this terms of the collection, the portfolio, and the exhibition. Now let's think about how this works, because I think just like writing and speaking, we need to be thinking wider than year 12. We need to have a wider focus. So in year 10, I think we should be asking the students to make a collection of their work and producing a portfolio of their best work over the year. And then year 11, exactly the same. So by the time they get to year 12, they fully understand the concepts of portfolios. They know how to collect their works. They know how to write the learning commentaries. They're familiar with the concept of the portfolio. So in year 12, we don't have to train them to do this. They're ready and willing to do this. And then we have the final exhibition, which is a submitted portfolio to get to the exam. So we need to think about this portfolio in terms of a 3-year project rather than just a 1-year project. So how does this work? For the collection, they need to collect the artifacts, they need to write the learning commentaries, they need to put all of this in the collection and then collect more tasks and so on. So they're just adding to the collection, and the audience is themselves. It's their collection. But then we actually have the portfolio. And to do this, it's a bit more involved. They should complete a self-assessment. Select artifacts and commentaries from the collection and put them in the portfolio. And then as time goes by, update the self-assessment and add more artifacts and commentaries and take artifacts and commentaries away so that this portfolio is the best of the best. And this portfolio has 2 audiences, the student themselves, and the teachers. Then we have the exhibition. Now, this is different. Do we need to have self-assessment in the exhibition, the submitted portfolio? Is it the top 5 tasks, for example, or top 4, top 3, top 10? And do we need to include the learning commentaries? And we don't necessarily have to have the self-assessment and learning commentaries in the exhibition. They're really part of the learning portfolio. The exhibition is the showing portfolio. It's to show the current best of their abilities. Now, the audience, again, is the selves and the teachers, but also a third party, possibly, whoever looks at the submitted portfolio. Could be potential future employers. Lots of people could look at the exhibition portfolio. Now, paper or digital. It's nice to have both. It's nice to have a paper version, which you can look through, but it's easier to submit a digital version. And digital can mean different things because you could handwrite an essay and then photograph it or scan it, and that's digital. Or you could word process the essay, and obviously it's natively digital. But it's nice to have a paper version and a digital version. And a digital version might be a web page, or it might be a folder on Google Docs with separate documents, or it might be one document in book form. So this is something you need to decide as a school. As I mentioned earlier, what format does it take? Now, portfolio competitions is an idea to work with portfolios across the school, and I suggest having an annual portfolio competition, which is school-wide but subject-specific. And there should be prizes for the best overall portfolio in the subjects in school. You might want to do this year 10, 11, and 12, or you might just want to do it year 12. And there should also be prizes for individual artifacts. So a person might win for the best overall portfolio, but another person might win for the best English essay or the best English infographic, for example. And then you might want to consider having a national competition so that the schools submit their best overall portfolios for a national competition. There's a jury, and a school and a student might win the national portfolio competition in English or maths or physics or something like that. And this would be very beneficial in terms of the value given by students to the portfolio. And it's another way, it's another avenue to shine for the students. You have Olympiads, so that they enter Olympiads, and that's a way for them to get recognition for their abilities. The portfolio competition is another way to recognize the students' abilities to do things. And the more ways you have of recognizing the individual students and their abilities, the better, I think. So things you need to consider. I mean, you need to consider and agree across the school what are the contents of the portfolio. What are your school standards? As I mentioned earlier, should be the same across the school, or definitely across the subject within the school. What are the national standards, if any? And what needs to be submitted for others to see? And should you have portfolio competitions in your schools as part of the school culture? And which I think would be a very good thing. So these are the key issues which you need to consider, I think. Pal Diaz.